Hello, welcome to Matrix Live Season 2, Episode 6 from our office, which is looking more and more like an office. We've emptied almost all the boxes, and as you can see, we have our wonderful banner.
This is mainly for acoustic baffling, though. So we've gone and built this glass meeting room here, our one and only meeting room. Let's spin it around quickly. You can see, well, you can't really see it because it's glass and everything. And it turns out that it's basically perfectly tuned to the resonant frequency of my voice, unless we go and erect our great big duvet cover, as we call it, here. So that's the only reason we're quite so aggressively branded today.
Yes, but it's nice.
It feels a little bit like a TV studio, which is almost appropriate for Matrix Live. Somebody was complaining the other day that they don't know who we are and that we're just weird people who come and talk about Matrix. So if you're tuning in for the first time, hi, I'm Matthew, and I'm the tech lead of Matrix.
Hello, I'm Amandine, and I'm the business lead of Matrix.
So basically, I look after everybody working on the tech side of things, and Amandine looks after everything else, basically. Shall we talk about what's been going on?
Yes, sure. Do you want to start with Riot Web?
No, I think you should start with Riot Web.
Well, okay. So we have done a last-minute release today, which is 13.5, to fix a slightly obscure XSS vulnerability.
So we should credit this to Wally303, who contacted us at about 4 a.m. this morning. I happened to be awake due to matrix.org having deadlocked. And it's embarrassing thing that actually crept in a long time ago in RightWeb 0.9 back in 2016, which is an obscure feature called external URL that allows a bridge to give a URL to an event which appears in the context menu in RightWeb when you click on that event, which allows you to go to the original source where that event came from if it were bridged. So for instance, the Twitter bridge includes a link back to Twitter for the event. It turns out that this was never correctly sanitized, so it's possible for people to inject nasty things into those events, which is why we have rushed out this release on 0.13.5. So TLDR, please upgrade to 0.13.5 if you haven't already. I hit refresh if you use the Riot hosted ones. And also, don't click on external URLs from events from nasty random people, or even use the feature at all, frankly, because I guess there might be some small chance of somebody trying to do naughty stuff with that. It's our first ever genuine cross-site scripting vulnerability that we're aware of, and thanks again to Wally303 for going and responsibly disclosing it to us.
Yeah, in terms of progress by the team, there have been some perf work done by Dave mainly, and Luke has been working on the offline mode.
So offline mode is a new thing, which in theory lets you run RightWeb without any server being visible at all, which in theory is something that should be quite easy to do because we already do it when the server goes offline. But to make it work so you can launch the app without a server, it turns out to be a little bit more fiddly, but it's there now. The plan on RightWeb going forwards, however, is to get back to polishing it and performance work and basically making the remaining features up in the air stable and, heaven forbid, doing a release of 0.14, which is hopefully going to happen next week.
On the mobile side of things, mostly iOS progress this week, so a new fix for all the spontaneous logouts, and the new release is almost ready to go live now that our building servers are starting building again.
Yep.
I think they've been quite...
They're no longer sitting in boxes. Our old iOS build server, which is a beautiful old Mac Pro cheese grater thing, is now actually plugged in again, which is always good.
Mm-hmm. And still some perf work on the communities.
Yeah, the communities is looking really cool. I was playing with it today on iOS and it was working well. We've got Flair, most importantly. That's the thing that we've forgotten.
Yeah.
Quick, add it to the notes for YouTube. There we go. Not that we have a script or notes. It's all live. It's still live, except it isn't live. You know what we mean.
Well. Okay, Synapse.
Synapse, lots and lots of performance work and ops work over the course of the week to try to make sure that we don't hit CPU ceiling anymore. We've had a couple of instances where we have, and a couple of exciting deadlocks as well. The most exciting stuff is probably that we have the split out of the sender path into separate worker processes almost complete, thanks to Eric's hard work. This is the creation of a new worker called an event creator, which basically means that if you visualize a big Synapse, the matrix.org one now, you've got lots of workers where events come in on one side, and then they all funnel through replication streams in TCP to the Synapse master, which basically does nothing other than write it to disk. And then it immediately splits out again to all of the synchrotrons which receive the events coming out the other side. So it's basically as shardable as a Synapse can ever be at this point, and hopefully will give us enough headroom to finally finish Dendrite. There's also been a bunch of other stability work there, fixing issues when you purge events, which came up because we were running around handling diskspace outages for Postgres and the media store. And it turns out that matrix.org is quite unhappy if you try to purge billions of events from random Fedora message queue rooms, which we apparently have bridged into. Either way, Synapse is looking pretty good, and I think we should have a major release in the fairly near future to bring in some of this cool stuff.
And we will definitely add the animated diagram you just did to the spec and explanations on how this works.
Absolutely. It's really kind of cool, although we're in a slightly embarrassing situation where Synapse in some ways is starting to resemble Dendrite, but still Dendrite's going to be better because there's Go and you can have multiple databases rather than just one big one.
So in terms of Dendrite, hasn't been progressing much,
no,
but
it's all been on Synapse.
Hopefully next week should be the week.
Hopefully, although if we're going to do a Synapse release, that's going to take a few days as well. We will go back to Dendrite, and it's like Return to the Forbidden Planet. On the widget side of things, there's been a lot of progress still continuing on StickerPacks and going through sequence diagrams of the flows involved in getting these things hooked up nicely is frankly a bit scary, but also on the right lines, and we're basically going to try to simplify the remaining stuff in order to ship it out as quickly as we can. And a lot of my time this week has ended up working on the spec, which is always good. I think possibly following on after FOSDEM last week, there's been a lot of interest in improving the event representation structure. I think it all came from Halfshot wanting to tell Max the details of his flights into Brussels for FOSDEM and wishing that we had a calendar event type in Matrix. So he did the obvious thing and spec'd one, which then opened Pandora's box of how calendaring should work in Matrix. And it's actually been a really good set of discussions and has basically, hopefully, at last, unblocked the whole problem of how do you store kind of arbitrary type data in events, such that if you have a calendar and then a geolocation and a thumbnail and a summary, they can all get mixed up together in a coherent manner. And there is a lot of proposals happening on that right now. Dean, you're running out of time.
Yes.
Sorry. Finally, do you want to do hiring?
On the hiring side of things, well, if you've got that far, then it means you are interested in what we're doing, and if you want to work full-time on this beautiful project, well, just give us a shout.
To jobs at matrix.org or jobs at riot.im, depending on whether you're feeling matrixy or rioty.
So especially for Dendrite stuff and Riot Web and Android. So yeah, please reach out.
And thank you everybody who's continuing to support Matrix on Patreon, LiberaPay and all the other channels. We haven't got an update on Matrix.org Foundation this week, but we are continuing to work away on it.
Yep. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.